This week's Parshiot are Parshiot Matot and Maasei. And specifically in Parsha Matot, there's a story that I want to look at. You see, the representatives of Gad and Reuven come up to Moshe and they say, Moshe, we're going through these lands, we're on our way to Eretz Yisrael, and they're not even past the Yarden yet, and they're on the other side of the Yarden and they see these beautiful land. They look around, they see the grass is great for growing animals. And the Shvatim of Gad and Reuven have a lot of animals. So they say, Moshe, can we stay here? This land is perfect. This is exactly what we need. We could build pens for our animals, and we could build cities for our children. So then Moshe, hearing the news that Gad and Reuven, they don't want to come and cross the Yarden, he says, I've been trying to get to Eretz Yisrael for 40 years. I'm trying to get Bnei Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. I'm dying to go in myself. I can't even go. And you who have the opportunity to go into Israel aren't even going. Oh my God, Moshe says, this reminds me of the spies when we were just at the border and the spies had to ruin it and we had to go through the whole desert. And not only that, you're going to sit back and relax here on the land that's good while all Bnei Yisrael are fighting to conquer Eretz Yisrael. It's not like Eretz Yisrael is empty for them to walk into. We have to fight battles. We have to win wars. And you're going to be sitting back, relaxing, and having a good time with your flocks of eating the great grass. So then Reuven says, no, it's nothing like that. We appreciate the journey. We want to go to Israel. We want to go to Israel. So then Moshe says, what do you mean? How are you going to prove it? So he says, I'll let you stay here if you swear to me to battle with Bnei Yisrael, to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and then you can come back here and you can have this land. But first you have to help Bnei Yisrael conquer and get the land of Eretz Yisrael. So the Shvatim agree. So when the Shvatim agree, Moshe tells them, fine, if you do the things that you promised me, he says, build for yourself cities for your youngsters and pens for your flock. So the Rabbanim, they pick up on a discrepancy between the two things that the Shvatim and Moshe say. See, the Shvatim, they say that we can build pens for our flock, we could build things for our animals, and we could build cities for our children. While Moshe goes and flips it. He says you should build cities for your children, and then you should build pens for your flock. Now the answer is, why does Moshe flip the script? Why does he switch it? It's not like Moshe forgot the way they said it. Why did he specifically change the order of what they were saying? This story could be a story can highlight what Moshe was trying to tell the children of Reuven and Gad, which is this. If I'm not mistaken, it was Rav Waxman who said it. He said that Rav Waxman, his family happened to go through the Holocaust, and he was always curious. He never got to meet his grandmother, but he was always curious and trying to hear stories about his grandmother who passed away in Auschwitz. And one time he was with his aunt, and his aunt was saying a story about his grandmother, and he clearly remembers perking up to listen because he wanted to know more. And his aunt was saying this story about how when they arrived at Auschwitz, when you get to Auschwitz in the concentration camps, the first thing they do is they say, who can work and who is not of use to us. The Nazis, Yimach Shemam Shelo Neda, they decided who was worthy to live based on who could do physical labor. And people who couldn't do physical labor were the elderly, people who were too old, and babies, people who were too young. So unfortunately, those people were not able to make it. So they're splitting people into two lines, and the elderly people are going into one line, and the people who are in the middle range, who are working age, are going to the right, and all the babies are going to the left. And the aunt is saying that I get put into the right, but my mother is put into the left. And for some reason, I knew that this was the end of the line. And she looks to her mother. You know, in all of the madness, there are kids crying, being separated from their parents, children from their grandparents. And she looks to her mother, and she sees her mother holding two crying children who weren't even hers. She was comforting them while they were crying for their mother, and she was holding them like a Jewish grandma. She was holding them and comforting them. What Moshe was trying to tell Gad and Reuven, it was this. It's that, yes, this is good place for your flock. And it's important to have a parnasa, yes, but know what your priorities are. First, it's the children. That's who we are. We care about one another. We care about the kinderlach. We care about the kids. First, you care about the kids, and then you care about the flock and building the pens and all of that. But know where your priorities stand. Know what they are. It's the kids first. You know, we find ourselves during in the middle of the 3 weeks. We're about to go to Tisha B'Av. This is a very serious time in the Jewish calendar. And there's a lesson that's blaring in Tisha B'Av. It's the whole lesson of Ahavta l'recha kamocha, and you should love you should love everybody. It's ahavat chinam. It's a freedom of love. You should love everybody regardless. And there's a story which I think beautifully sums up what we should be taking away from these 3 weeks, which is there was a man. He was in a taxi cab in Israel. And this man was a rabbi, but the taxi cab driver was chiloni. He was somebody who was against religion. So the rabbi gets into the taxi cab, and the guy was a Jew, but he was against religion. So he says, "Achi, my brother." It's a very common thing that they say in Israel. So he says, "Achi, I need to go here." And the man says, "You're not my brother." He sees a rabbi, he says, "You're not my brother." And the Rav says, "Well, of course, I'm your brother." So the guy says, "What are you talking about? I'm not a brother with somebody like you. You're not my brother. Stop saying achi." So then the rabbi says, "My Rebbe told me that you are my brother." And the guy says, "What do you mean your Rebbe told you? What is shtiyot? What is this nonsense that you're saying? We're not brothers. We're not alike. We're not the same. We're not in the same group. I'm a chiloni. I'm not even wearing a kippah. You're a rabbi. You're probably Haredi. We're not brothers." And so the rabbi says, "Do you know who my Rebbe was? My Rebbe was Hitler, who would have killed you next to me because we're all part of the same family." Our priorities should be to our children and to each other. We shouldn't think about the dealings of the world and, I need to make parnasa. I have to worry about the cattle. Our priorities are each other. It's the children we bring into this world, the people that we live in this world next to each other, the people who are our neighbors, our fellow Yidden, our fellow Jews. So B'ezrat Hashem, I hope that we take stock of these 3 weeks. We use these 3 weeks well, and we realize and we reprioritize and we know who we are, what we should care about. Moshe put the list in a certain order on purpose. We should care about the kids. We should care about each other. We should care about every single one of us. And B'ezrat Hashem, may this be the last Tisha B'Av we experience. Chazak Baruch.